He also mentioned
to
that
be
go ahead.
Seem to be impervious to any notion that they may not even know what they're talking about, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
They've learned to talk very, very well with the camera whirling and the bright lights shining on them, and say absolutely nothing or say something completely stupid, but are quite happy to do it because the recognition is being focused in their direction.
Now, you also mentioned that it's because democracy is open to any and all who can get themselves elected, either through connections, personality, or personal wealth, that it is a social system where leadership positions become a hotbed for sociopaths. How does the more actualized man, if you will, fit in?
Well, he wouldn't be interested in politics at all, in my view. Mm-hmm. And whereas those stuck for the need for esteem are drawn to it. Well, I use a colorful, flies to cow pies sort of analogy there. But
well, we are both from the center parts of the United
States.
States.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I'm from Kansas, and you're from Iowa. And I was actually, when I gave the speech, I was in Colorado Springs, so that all worked.
It all worked.
But yeah, I think self-actualized people, are the kind of people that you'd love to have dinner with, and are very smart and very humble, and the kind of person you call when you have a problem, when you need good advice. I don't think that you immediately think of Barney Frank as a guy you might want to call if you wanted good advice. But that's what we're stuck with as our leaders. And of course, I could name numerous other examples.
Well, even religious philosophers recognize the shortcomings of those in power, correct?
That's right. St. Augustine wrote a book on the theory of just war, and he was brought to mind when we had a wonderful speech from Judge Andrew Napolitano this summer at the Mises University.
I was in attendance. That was wonderful.
Yeah, and Napolitano made the point that St. Augustine had made, that libido domini is a thing in human nature that attracts people into government. In other words, they want to dominate their fellow man, and as the judge said, that's why we have to accept the fact that the same men who were brilliant enough to create and construct the United States government actually were these same guys could write repugnant laws like the Alien and Sedition Acts.
Yeah, where free speech was made illegal.
Exactly. So as great as those men were, there's still something in there that, the result of Adam's fall, pride, vanity, and as Augustine wrote, libido domini, the lust for domination, entice men toward waging wars and committing all manner of violence.
So, I love how Hoppe further describes the natural elites as the more successful they are as professionals, businessmen, etc., the more they recognize that they have to set themselves up as an example, that they strive to live up to higher standards of ethical conduct. This means accepting as their duty to support openly, and I'm stealing directly from your words, openly, proudly, and as generously as they possibly can, the values that they have recognized as right and true. This is in sharp contrast to politicians in a democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. These people give of just a sense of duty to their neighbors and the people around them, and they do strive to set high standards and be ethical, whereas politicians seem to have very much a tin ear towards those kind of things. And Hoppe goes on to talk about, well, what does the natural elite get in return? And what they receive in return is an intellectual inspiration, a nourishment, a strength. These folks will be recognized forever as outstanding individuals. And I think it's another example of Hoppe's insight into time preference, not just in monetary matters, but I think in the way people conduct their lives. People, outstanding individuals who are the natural elite, want to be remembered well. They want to be remembered for rising above the masses and making lasting contributions to mankind. Politicians, in contrast, do exactly the opposite, unfortunately, in our world. Their names do live on forever. They get their names on buildings, on statues, despite doing very, very despicable things.
Now, I think one of the most important things that we can say in this conversation, maybe even the most, is that, but people are thinking naively that all they need to do to make this right is to elect the right people. But what makes this idea so naive?
In my view, what you have is a group of candidates that, again, are they're one step short of self-actualization. So they're constantly going to be looking to build their self-esteem, and thus we will never elect the right politicians because, as I mentioned before, the self-actualized person, in Maslow's words, in my view, wouldn't be interested in politics. This is not
they aren't and won't be running for office.
They aren't running now, and they won't be in the future. You will not have them to pick from. Unfortunately, we're going to have this group of sociopaths that are at worst crooks and at best incompetents, running for office.
Well, we're going to come into our last segment, folks. So on that cheery note, we'll be coming into our closing of our show. So please stay with us. This is Michael McKay and Radio Free Market, and we'll be back in just a minute. We're going to talk about, well, what do we do next? Just throw up our hands? Stay with us.